Hello, all. Welcome to the Summer Sustainability Summit brought to you by One Click LCA. My name is Asha Ramachandran, and I'm so happy to be your host today. The summit is a 2-day free online event for architecture, engineering, construction, manufacturing, and sustainability professionals across the construction value chain. We're so delighted to have you here to get inspired, get engaged, and get sustainable. Now let's start this session, how AI, digital twins, and data accelerate sustainable infrastructure, featuring Rodrigo Fernandes, Director ESDG at Bentley Systems, and Johanna Järvinen, Embodied Carbon Expert at OneClick LCA. This session is specifically for infrastructure engineers, designers, builders, operators, construction managers, and project lead, as well as ESG strategists. The Summer Sustainability Summit is brought to you by OneClick LCA, the global LCA software empowering the industry to decarbonize and get sustainable. With it, you can comply with more than 80 national regulations, standards, and certification, access the world's largest LCA database with over 250,000 LCA datasets, and bring LCA into your existing workflow with over 20 BIM and other integrations to make your calculations faster and easier. For over 20 years, OneClick LCA has been making the construction value chain sustainable. You can learn more about us at oneclicklca.com. Next, I would love to introduce Rodrigo. Rodrigo is the Director of ESDG, Empowering Sustainable Development Goals at Bentley Systems. Bentley Systems offers comprehensive engineering software for infrastructure, providing tools that facilitate design, construction, and operation of various types of infrastructure. Rodrigo, we're so excited to have you here.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and I'm excited to be here as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Next up, I would love to introduce Johanna Järvinen. Johanna is a sustainability expert within the built environment with extensive knowledge of LCA. Johanna, we're so happy to have you here today.
Likewise, nice to be here. Hello, everyone.
Thanks, Johanna. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into our session. First up, Rodrigo, tell us a bit more about yourself and your role at Bentley Systems.
Right. Okay. So my role, so director of ESDG, right? So it's not a very traditional way of talking about the director of sustainability, but indeed ESDG is a play with acronyms with the ESG, which is a responsibility and imperative for all corporations, all businesses. Then there's also the SDGs, right? The Sustainable Development Goals, which is like a blueprint for all the initiatives, the corporations, individuals, and Bentley as a software development company has a relatively low carbon footprint. But indeed, we have a major opportunity and responsibility to address some key challenges that our users face today, right? Like climate change and many aspects that are key for achieving sustainable development goals. So indeed, my role is to work in this handprint approach, how we can implement strategies for increasing our handprint, Bentley's handprint, with our technology, with our solutions, and with our partnerships, so that our users and stakeholders achieve sustainable development goals faster and better. Yeah.
Thanks, Rodrigo. Now, Johanna, tell us a bit more about yourself and what you do at OneClick LCA on a daily basis.
Yes, so I work in a business development team. Currently, my role consists of looking after the NZ sales team, as well as commercializing our new products that we are releasing in quite rapid speed at the moment. My background is in the construction industry in the UK. I've been working in construction about nearly 20 years now, helping contractors and developers meeting their sustainability goals since 2007, I would say, when the environment was a little bit different, and there was only a few of us. Now there is obviously more people working on the field, and there is a lot more also advanced things going on, like people actually regulating embodied carbon and more and more on energy sector as well is moving forward. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Johanna. Very interesting. And now I'll provide the first question to kickstart our very exciting discussion. So the first question goes like, what are the primary challenges or barriers today for the organization trying to address the decarbonization of infrastructure, particularly in large or complex infrastructure projects? Rodrigo, I think I'll pass this over to you first, and you and Johanna can engage in a free discussion.
Okay, yeah, so this is indeed a big challenge for many organizations that have to deal with large and complex infrastructure projects, right? So these projects, they usually have diverse stakeholders, lots of disciplines involved, a complex supply chain, which creates difficulties when you need to get information from all the products involved, right? So then when you're managing large and complex infrastructure projects, you also have lots of applications involved, data formats. In many cases, data is siloed because it's so much data, so many things, so many stakeholders involved. Then adding to this, there's the fact that infrastructure projects deal with long-lived assets, right? So they will stay with us several decades, 80 years or even more in many cases. Some critical infrastructure might stay with us several times. And of course, when you're managing these types of projects, you need to handle and to manage all these life cycle stages. You should not be focused on only on one, but to try to understand how this will evolve, right? So that's one important aspect. The other aspect that is also a challenge here is the fact that the talent gap. Not enough people is feeding the pipeline for answering and responding to all these large and complex infrastructure projects. We get more and more complex infrastructure projects as we invest more on sustainable infrastructure and the strategies for decarbonizing, decarbonization pathways require more investment in green infrastructure projects or projects for sustainable development, right? So this puts more pressure in engineering firms. So we talk a lot about what is today called the biggest capital reallocation in history, as a result of the money that has to be allocated for net zero. This creates lots of challenges, not only in large infrastructure projects, even in small ones. So engineering firms and owner operators, in many cases, they need to deal with all these complex ecosystem, right? So it's really challenging, and the fact that they need to start acting as soon as possible, that's one key aspect. But the effort needs to be continuous, because with assets that will stay with us so many decades, they need to ensure some continuity and decarbonizing and sustainability and resilience. So it's really challenging today for addressing this.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Do you want to add something, Johanna?
Yeah, I mean, the sheer amount of information that is needed in the infrastructure project is quite time-consuming to handle. It's not just the carbonizing, but also costing and other metrics. I mean, we all know that the cost might increase in time, or it normally does, because the delivery of the project is not here. It lasts 10 years to actually build something. Also, just the amount of information needed for a, let's say, example. I know that one-click LCA was used to calculate carbon footprint on HS2 at concept stages, not for the whole line, but this was like a one station and the infrastructure around it. That took the whole team of LCA specialists to complete the LCA calculations for stage 2 about several weeks, and then also come up with ideas to improvements, because they had a target to reduce the carbon footprint by 20% stage 3. So all this work took probably, I'm not underestimating it, around months' time. So things might have already changed by then, like design changing and such like. So if it's just hard to keep up on all that all that. And also these things get delayed. Some get stopped and started quite a few times. So everything around it changes as well. So you have maybe different building standards, or there is also the policy changes along the line. So all of that is hard to keep up with. And then obviously the decarbonizing targets that you set on when you started the project might be actually like less than the actual government targets, for example, by the time you get to halfway of the project. So that is also kind of a little bit difficult.
Thank you. Thank you both for summarizing the challenges that are there. The next question I have for you is a bit interesting. So, how do digital twins and partnership like that between Bentley Systems and One Click LC empower companies to reduce carbon emissions and achieve their sustainability goals? Maybe Johanna, you can throw some light on this first, and Rodrigo, you can follow.
I mean, in One Click LC, we put a lot of effort of automation in different drawing programs and just within the software itself. I mean, I think it's the only way of carbon calculation can be scaled, so they could actually have a measurable impact to climate change. If you try to do things by hand, it takes too long and it's too complex, and then it won't get done on time. So obviously digitalization can help with different metrics, also like time management and cost, as well as obviously carbon reductions. The whole project delivery can be a lot more predictable, and the entire project delivery time can be obviously because it is so long. So we can, if it's over 10 years, we can get for more and more certainty of the cost and carbon factors a long period of time. So we can actually factor in all these changes if it has more automation and predictability, because these long delivery times add quite a lot of uncertainty, and things can spiral out of control quite easily. And there's also these obviously things that get cancelled then because of no one could predict certain things happening. It's too much cost or too much something else, or it's been taken too long because no one could predict it. So I think any kind of digitalization tools which can help to set the scene and easily and quickly kept up to date, and maybe also give some nice predictions, then that makes a lot more sense than do them in the silos, like Rod mentioned before. That a lot of things happen in silos, which they should all kind of talk to each other as well. So that's one part of the automation, that you have different things that you should be able to bring together in one big guidance, as in such calculations and guidance.
Thanks, Johanna. Rodrigo, do you want to explain the role of like Bentley Systems and explain a bit more about it?
Yeah, so I think we, trying to summarize in a simple sentence how this can be leveraged for helping companies achieving sustainable development goals and reduce carbon emissions. I think the sentence is to do more with less and doing it better. All that we can do from our side, from Bentley side of things, is that we feel that we can support the industry with an open, collaborative, and vendor agnostic approach, establishing an ecosystem of partnerships like One Click LCA, so that we focus on key aspects that we feel that are really important for the industry and for all these sectors that want to achieve projects on time and in the expected cost, and reducing carbon as much as possible. We need to bring data federation. We need to promote data reuse. We need to promote interoperability, more flexibility. We need to promote transparency so that the information flows through the whole supply chain, reducing data silos, as Johanna also mentioned, and of course, more efficient collaboration among all. right? So, and then, we feel we can do it, but we need partners like One Click LCA that are carbon calculation experts that we can, plug in and integrate with what we do, and then bring more accurate and more advanced carbon analysis as an integral part of our digital twin solutions. That's exactly what we want to promote, right? So we focused on this aggregation of data and bringing all together in a way that you can collaborate and achieve success. But of course, carbon is a really important part of it, and we don't expect to start reinventing the wheel. We have great partners and already existing um, organizations and companies like One Click LCA that can indeed um, uh, be part of this workflow, and I think that's really important. And at the end of the day, when you're managing the large and complex infrastructure projects we were saying, instead of having them spending a lot of time for doing carbon reporting, with this partnership, we feel that we can create a workflow that will accelerate the process very much.
Thank you, Rodrigo.
And just to say an example here, which I think there's a good example from Joanna, you were mentioning, I think, AGS2. So indeed, Network Rail, they had a pilot project which they call the Digital Data and Carbon Platform, where they were basically managing not only AGS2 but also Northern Powerhouse Rail and Transpennine route upgrade program. So they wanted to bring all together in a single way to analyze carbon from all these rail infrastructure. And this was quite challenging. It is quite challenging, of course, because they have so many players, so many vendors involved. So to create an ecosystem where they can show everything and visualize and analyze it, it's only possible with a digital twin platform that is open and collaborative. So that's what we have worked with Network Rail in this process, and One Click LCA was also part of the process there. So I think it's just an example, right? So when managing complex projects like this, I think it's really key that a collaborative and open platform is part of the game.
Thank you, Rodrigo. I think Johanna rightly said, like, working in silos is a thing of the past, and you're telling about collaboration, that's the thing of future. So, and that leads to our next question. How do you envision the role of technology, including AI and digital twins? Because you've already mentioned digital twins, in driving sustainable project execution and supporting infrastructure decarbonization over, let's say, the next decade. Rodrigo, maybe you want to answer this one because you're already explaining this.
Yes, so digital twins. So what is infrastructure? What are infrastructure digital twins, right? So we try to integrate a wide range of inputs into digital simulations so that we can facilitate representation of the infrastructure asset and also related real world conditions forward and backward in time, so that we can allow engineers and operators to work in context at scale and in real time, with real-time information, with updated information as much as possible. So why is this really important for engineers? And for the engineering community, because this enables clear design, efficient construction, reliable monitoring and maintenance. So in all life cycle stages, they can make better decisions with all the information, updated information that they can have. And this also allows them to collaborate, right? So AI and data-driven solutions in intelligent digital twins, if we want to call it, brings something that we also call as infrastructure intelligence, which is something that is really key today, and it's a tool that we can benefit today, right? So if we can take advantage of all the data that exists and extract insights and patterns and many things that we can do with AI, we can, as Joanna said, we can bring automation in many ways. But for instance, if we look to new infrastructure, right? So we can de-risk project execution with digital twins and AI. So I'm just thinking in projects like, for instance, that we had ITER project, a project for building a nuclear fusion reactor in southern France. So it's called one of the biggest projects in the world in terms of complexity, size, number of pieces that they need to assemble. It's huge, right? So to achieve and to build something like that, that will take several decades till we have a solution for creating fusion energy. They have been using some of our solutions like Synchro for the process of assembling the nuclear reactor, because they need to align all this. So creating a digital twin of the whole infrastructure even before being built allow them to better scheduling and planning the process of construction, and in many cases allows them to simulate scenarios, like for instance understanding if, okay, if I use these materials, how am I going to operate in this room, right? So they have changed materials based on immersive experience with the digital twin, saying, oh, this door doesn't work because the way it opens, it doesn't allow me to move efficiently in the room. So they are making changes in the decision of materials based on the digital twins, right? On simulation process, and so that's one example of the risking project execution. But also other projects, like another project which we had in the US, a large wastewater treatment plant for a project called Eco Water. They were able to, with using our Synchro software, they were able to accelerate the process of concluding the the treatment plant. They saved a lot of money, but that's not just it. It's because by doing so, they were able to recirculate and reuse water, wastewater, which is now being used for farming and for agriculture processes, that allows them to, to deliver sustainable development goals much faster than they would expect. So that's one aspect. Then automation of materials, automate basic steps that we don't want carbon experts and environmental engineers to be spending time on, like material assignment when they are doing carbon calculation or aggregating data from multiple sources. AI and data-driven solutions can supply this and in carbon reporting, or even making better decisions, optioneering for carbon reduction, making different scenarios. Okay, if I use this design or that design, is this going to affect the carbon footprint of my project? So they can anticipate these cases. And just moving to the needle also to existing infrastructure, we also need to optimize efficiency in energy or in water or in carbon. All this is important, right? So we need to make sure that all the infrastructure that exists today, thinking on water supply systems, for instance, you want to optimize pump energy efficiency, right? So in order to understand how you can do it, you need to ensure if your pump is operating in the right and the optimal point. It's like a car. If it's going too fast or too slow, you're going to spend more fuel or more carbon. So you want to find the right operating point, and you can monitor all this with data-driven solutions today, right? That's one important point. You can also predict energy production in solar and wind. So this is using data-driven solutions. So if you can predict that, you can then manage the energy that you will produce in different ways. Or you can simply increase resilience, increasing maintenance and monitoring and for more resilience and more reliability. So thinking on water leakage, I was talking about water supply systems, but also district heating systems. So you might have leakages. So you can use AI to detect anomalies in your patterns and try to isolate areas that need replacement or maintenance there. But also dam inspection. You can also do dam monitoring solutions are key today because you have more pressure from extreme weather events. So again, you can use AI and computer vision, IoT, and digital twins so that you can do remote inspection of dams even without being there, for instance, or bridges or roads. All that can be optimized. So I spent a lot of time here because the advantages, we have so many benefits of of using these approaches that I could stay here the whole day giving you examples.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo. That's so interesting to hear your case studies and sharing all this experience. Johanna, maybe shuttling over to you about LCA. So, how crucial is life cycle assessment in this early design phase of infrastructure projects? What's your experience on this?
I mean, I think life cycle assessment should be always done early, like from the brief stage onwards. Otherwise, like if you already decide you build something, let's say out of steel, you're not going to change it anymore when your procurement stages has begun. Like you should have run some options and have some design options and others really early stages. I mean, if you do it in every design stage and every design change gets also assessed, then it's like helping you to get where you want. If you just run it like once you decided what you do, it's only a calculation, then it doesn't guide your design. Whereas it should obviously be it should be cost and carbon hand in hand. So once you do a cost plan or you do them even together, and if something changes, it always should be checked. And also, I mean, then there is a short-term cost and then there's a long-term cost, same as the life cycle assessment. There is today's carbon, there's also then the whole life carbon aspect. So how is it actually, is it durable materials, or do you have to maintain it all the time? Like that's probably where the AI can come as well handy to see. They can probably predict all the maintenance scenarios for different things. So then you can say that, well, this design obviously is low carbon today to build, but let's say in 50 years lifetime or 100-year lifetime, it is completely not the case when you take it all whole life carbon approach to it. Obviously, sometimes it's not necessary thought. They just think everything today, the cost today, the carbon today, whereas you should always think life cycle cost and the whole life carbon in there. So, I mean, yes, it should be started early. So it also helps on the predictability, what you're actually going to get. I mean, it's not going to be exactly accurate doing in a brief stage, but it will give you a direction where you should go with it. So you could do different design options and see which way you're going to take your design, and then obviously improve from that. Typically what happens is there is more carbon in the end of the project because people have forgotten things to calculate every little bit that actually goes into the project, which again, I mean, the AI could help on that, not to forget anything. You would already have a idea, like everything would be on place at the early stage. So like would be some sort of checking all everything that actually needed in the project is actually calculated as well on there. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, thanks, Johanna. To sum it up, like life cycle assessment at early design stage is super important. And yeah, Rodrigo, do you want to add something to what Johanna said?
Yeah, well, and Joanna already said a lot of things, but I would mention that also, we usually say that the most sustainable infrastructure is the one that is not built, right? So if you don't build, that's zero carbon, right? So if you build less, you will reduce carbon. If you build clever, you can reduce it and still build something. So there are different approaches here, and we need to handle them as much as possible. So when we start planning, do we really need to build that infrastructure? I think that's one key question that needs to start even before the early design. So I'm just giving this step back. Before the early design, when start planning, we need to make sure that the infrastructure is really needed. Can we use the existing infrastructure, retrofitting it, repurposing it to achieve the objectives that we are talking about it? And when we talk about retrofitting and repurposing infrastructure, we are indeed again talking about LCA and life cycle analysis, and we need to restart designing and see, to compare what is better. Can we repurpose or build something new? This analysis is something that needs to be, we need to make this analysis as much as possible, right? So in many cases, you can maximize the use of existing assets, optimize asset operation and all that. To understand the benefits and the cost benefit of that, you need to have a life cycle analysis. That's no way out, right? So that's one aspect. The other aspect, which I guess you and I already talked about it, but it's the fact that carbon reduction potential decreases over time, right? So if we start designers should have ways of quantifying the whole life carbon based on their design decisions, because if they have the full picture, they can even decide on higher embodied carbon footprint to reduce carbon in operations. But at the end, the budget might be positive, right? So it's a balance and something that they need to take into consideration. But to make this decision, they need tools and they need data so that they can make the better decision. It's very complex somehow, and I guess in the future, AI will probably support us with better decisions on this. One aspect is that, of course, after an initial process, they can also test and optioneer different low carbon materials or different designs and how it will impact the whole life carbon footprint. If they get an easy solution to make these tests and these scenarios, then they will be able to be more, to be more efficient in the decisions they make. But yes, I think even in infrastructure, we can think. I think when we talk about buildings in general, this is a no-brainer, right? For infrastructure, is still something that is giving initial steps. But just think about roads, for instance. Designing or deciding on how you're going to pave the roads might influence the carbon footprint that you will spend, or the emissions that you will be spending during the operational stage, because of the maintenance it will require, because of the cars that will be circulating there the tires might be more under pressure in specific pavements than others. So all these decisions will affect the whole life cycle analysis here, and this is something that I think we need to take into consideration to make well-informed decisions. It's certainly not something we can rely only on deciding materials. We need to decide on designing and doing it in a holistic way. And in many cases, decisions start in the planning stage, in the early concept stage, not in the design.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Yeah, I think to sum it up, LC is really important to make these informed decisions, and also, like Johanna said, to reduce cost and choose materials and all that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So we are moving to the last and final question. I think we can dig a bit deeper into this because it's super interesting. So it goes, how can policymakers and industry leaders better collaborate to ensure that the infrastructure of tomorrow is built on a sustainable and technologically advanced foundation? Rodrigo, do you want to go first? Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think, when we talk about policymakers and industry leaders, we might be talking about regulations and investments and funding, right? So I think that public and private investments should prioritize or even mandate the implementation of infrastructure projects that adopt sustainable practices. We, again, comparing with buildings and the vertical buildings, well, we already have a lot of green certifications and carbon certifications in that field. In for sustainable infrastructure, we already have them as well. So we have certifications like Envision, or a new one that was recently created, which was Blue Dot Network, BREEAM for infrastructure, the previous sequel. We have these, and I think they need to be part of the decision making and the process of investment and funding so they should be mandated somehow, or on when starting investing in these projects. Of course, carbon should be included in tenders, just like cost in many cases. So we put a lot of focus on cost. Makes sense. The cost is important, but carbon is also important, and so it will become more relevant. And I suppose it's going to be something that decision makers, policy makers, and industry leaders will need to include in procurement process and tenders and all these aspects. There's also a responsibility for industry leaders and for all the stakeholders that are involved in the process. I think we need to better promote and to better to better educate and start informing and educating owner operators and the whole community to increase carbon literacy and the impact of the decisions and their impacts, right? So if we have a user leveraging our software for doing something, or imagine an engineering firm working with an owner operator for a specific infrastructure, and then eventually the engineering firm should try to educate the owner operator, saying, okay, this is the design that you have here up on the table, but then if you choose this option B or option C, you will see that you will have you will lower carbon. You might spend more in this initial stage, but then you will save money in operations. So if we can provide this information in a way that we can educate the decision maker, I think that's also an important aspect. And just the final point that I think I was forgetting to mention is I feel that policymakers should promote the adoption of open and interoperable data standards to avoid vendor lock-in. Imagine if you're managing an infrastructure for 80 years, you want to make sure that you will not stay locked in a specific vendor, because the vendor that is here today might not be here in 20 years or in 40 years, right? So as a matter of fact, we are making 40 years this year. But it's something that I think should be promoted by policymakers. This interoperability, open standards, it's key for accelerating the process of sustainable and collaborative world for carbon reduction.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Johanna, you want to add something to what Rodrigo said?
I can't. I'm muted. Am I muted?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, it just says that I'm muted. Yes, I mean, policymakers' point of view, I think they should all in all set more ambitious targets. There seems to be always something starting and then it gets watered down to level that it's not really making a huge impact. Obviously, industry leaders, and I think that's happening quite a lot, not just infrastructure, but building industry generally, that the leaders are actually doing more and they build better and thinking they all have reduction targets when they really are trying. But that doesn't go like the whole industry. It's just the leaders. They obviously might push their supply chain with them. But if there is no overall policies or standards to build which are ambitious enough, then there will be always people who won't do anything or will do the bare minimum, and it's not obviously anyone's benefit. They all should have a even playground and all should push the same goal. I think some of the BIM standards in UK, everything meant to be a government project, BIM level 2. I think that got watered down quite quickly because people didn't quite understand what it meant. There was not enough people to do. There was massive gap in knowledge what actually needed. So it's still not really happened. They're just extending, and it's probably got forgotten by now. So even if it might be difficult, they should not just give in the first hurdle. So that's kind of my message, really.
Thank you, Johanna and Rodrigo, for this insightful discussion. I for sure learned a lot, and I think the audience did as well. So moving on, we have about 10 minutes left in our session. I'm really excited to present the top 3 takeaways from our session and what we learned today. And Rodrigo, as our guest today, I would like you to share these takeaways with our audience and maybe elaborate a bit on them.
Right. Yeah. So I think from all the discussion here, I think it's we try to emphasize and put on the spotlight how digital twins, AI, and data are available now and today to future-proof infrastructure. That's something that we will develop, will be more developed in the future, but it's something that is available now. You can really start leveraging data-driven solutions and drive infrastructure intelligence today. And I think this is key now for making better decisions, so that we can do more with less, with all the challenges we have discussed in the beginning of the session, right? So many challenges that we have. It's a humongous task to manage all those challenges without the support of advanced technology and advanced data-driven solutions. And we have examples around the world where some innovators and companies already leveraging this for achieving these outcomes and to achieve success. Of course, it's not just about technology. On the second point here, it's focusing on the aspect that this transition, this sustainable transition that can be hand in hand with digital transition. It's the fact that what we need to do is to change behavior. We need to change. We need to adopt some sustainability principles that are key, like circularity, accelerating renewables generation and distribution, but also efficiency, right? So all these aspects, and also sufficiency, which is another concept that we don't speak much, but it's also key for sustainability. But the fact that we need to adopt these principles, these levers for greenhouse gas emissions reduction, they can be accelerated by the power of digital twins and AI and data-driven solutions. That's what we feel, right? So if we want to improve and to adopt these principles, I think this double transition between digital and sustainable transition will be really key. And this is not just an aspect of improve. It's not just that we are going to deliver projects on time. It's an important part, but also the risking is really important. Ensure that we deliver these large, complex infrastructure projects is key for us for decarbonizing the world in many ways. When we discuss big, large projects, for instance, for energy transition, we want them to be delivered as fast as possible and to avoid the risks that come from delays, but also from the talent scarcity and all that. So we feel that that's something that these technologies can support. And also resilience, of course. We want and we need to decarbonize infrastructure, as infrastructure is responsible for like almost 80% of all greenhouse gas emissions. But the point is that change is happening now. Change is already happening today with all the extreme weather events. And today is World Environment Day, by the way. So it's an important point. But the changes, transformation is already happening today. So we need to make sure that existing infrastructure is also resilient to these changes that are already happening. Again, intelligent digital twins and data-driven solution will be key for this, ensuring that existing infrastructure is safe for everyone. So that's how I would summarize some of the discussions we had here today.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Spot on. Very good summary. And talking about digital tools, One-Click LC enables AEC professionals to deliver low-carbon infrastructure projects and comply with a lot of infrastructure compliance schemes like PAS 2080, BREEAM Infrastructure LC, and so on. And it also enables certifications for ISO and EN General construction specific LCA standards as well. So if you feel that One Click LCA sounds like a solution for your infrastructure needs, our business team of Carbon Expert would love to provide a tailored demo to show how our software might work for you. So if you're dialing in from Livestorm, you will see a poll asking the same. So if you're interested, please go ahead and click yes, and our experts will contact you. So we have a team of carbon experts like Johanna, with whom you can have very productive conversations about decarbonizing infrastructure. And finally, we have reached the moment that we've all been waiting for, a live Q&A with Rodrigo and Johanna. So if you have any last minute questions, don't hesitate to drop them in the chat section. Okay, so we have the first question here. Why is vertical construction addressing embodied carbon reduction more than the horizontal construction? Is it due to education, regulation, funding, or something else? Rodrigo, do you want to take this?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I think it's a mix of everything, right? So when regulation comes from education, if you don't have educated people, you will not get regulation, right? So those two is one aspect, and also funding is the same. If you don't have enough awareness, then and education again, you will not get funding for that. The fact is that we have focused a lot on vertical buildings and with certifications on buildings. It's an aspect. It's more isolated. So you start. If I'm building my own house, it's easy to control. I don't have so many silos. It's not so difficult to manage all this information. But when we are talking about huge infrastructure projects that might have a size of a city or a district, or whatever, or crossing boundaries like Rail Baltica in Europe, that's crossing multiple countries, it's more difficult to control and to avoid these silos. So I think it's a mix of, it's a combination of factors, and in many cases we are dealing with infrastructure projects that doesn't take just 1 year to conclude, or 2 years, like a vertical building in linear infrastructure. You can you can start discussing the project today to implement it in 10 years or so. For instance, in Portugal, we are discussing an airport for a new airport for Lisbon, and we have been under discussions for more than 60 years. Can you imagine? So this is very, very challenging, right? So it's not as easy as a vertical building.
Thank you, Rodrigo. So the next question, maybe we can make this super quick. So what are the best practices for incorporating circular economy principles into design, construction, and maintenance of sustainable infrastructure? Maybe over to you, Hannah, for a super quick answer.
I mean, if you are replacing existing infrastructure, then that's a good start. So then you can have a look what you can actually still use and not just ignore what's there already. So do a good audit what's there, what can be reused, what might not be reusable on site. It might be that someone else might want it. So that's also always an option. It might not be good for you, but there might be always someone who would benefit on it. And if you building new, then obviously there is also a lot of things you can think of buying from resources that already have been used before, and looking around what you can buy things that has recyclable content or reused content in them. And then also in your design, you're thinking about how you can maybe dismantle it in the years to come, so you don't glue things together or use something that is not coming down. So if it's anything that is nicely put together and can be nicely dismantled and used in parts, then that's always a good design options there. So that's really quick. And maintenance, obviously, again, things that are durable. Don't put things in the structure that has to be constantly changed. That's not really circular economy thinking. You need something which lasts and can be repaired in a minimum effort without moving the whole thing out of the structure, for example.
Thank you, Johanna. And yeah, we've come to the end of the session. So thank you, Johanna and Rodrigo, for being here. And thank you, everyone. So if you would like to contact us, you can reach out at oneclicklca.com or write to us directly at sales@oneclicklca.com, or you can follow our LinkedIn or YouTube channels. So thank you all for your time, and see you next time. And thanks so much, Rodrigo and Johanna, for being here. It was such a pleasure talking to you both. I really enjoyed it immensely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks.